All right, well, welcome to our supported bridge beginnings. So we're in restorative, so we're going to use lots of props. So I want you to have a blanket and a single fold at the back of your mat. You're near a wall. You're actually going to be at the wall in the beginning. And you'll position your bolster so it's lengthwise, right? It's straight in the center of the mat. It's not horizontal, but you want to have the bolster so you can actually straddle the bolster, sit onto it. If it hurts your knees to get in this kind of a crouch position, take a moment to get the bolster so that when you're sitting onto it, whether you crawl onto it or you push straight down, that the hips, right, there's going to be more of you than the bolster. It's going to feel like I can't quite fit on this. So what I want you to have is a couple blocks that are at the second setting next to the wall. If you prefer to use a bolster instead of the blocks, you could have put a bolster just straight across and have the blocks on the side. So you can also use the bolster or decide when you get there. Now you place your feet on top of the blocks, and you're going to have to kind of play with this orientation with the bolster. What I want you to do is to lengthen back on top of the bolster with the bolster top between the shoulder blades. We've done this many times, different ways of doing this without the wall being your essential support. So this is where it's critical. So I sit at the edge of the bolster, and then I push the balls of my feet into the wall, and the heels are a little bit off of the wall. So as I push back, I've got to use the wall. I'm pushing, and then my obviously core bundle gets a little bit shaky. But if I feel like the bolster is already in the center of me, guess what? You need to lower down or push the bolster farther back. So as I push back and I lengthen the legs, I feel like the bolster's too far down for me. Probably if you're taller, it won't be that way. So I'm going to take the moment to bring my knees to bending, come back up, and push the bolster a little bit back until my most important part is that my feet are at the wall, right? My legs are lengthening, and the bolster feels like it's stuck at my upper back. Well, actually, it's rib cage right behind the heartland, and you can feel how the ribs kind of open and slide outwards. It's kind of like there are these little doors that you're just kind of opening. And then the mid body, right, the diaphragm has this interesting journey of, it's like this lengthening pattern, strengthening the diaphragm. Okay, so take some time to figure this out. If your heels are a little bit away from the wall, I want you to still really work with getting that reach. So I might scoop my tailbone under. Try one more time. Remember, your body is probably feeling bigger than the bolster. It'll take time. The weight of your head is back, and idea is to add your bag of weight on the upper thighs. Okay, so feel where the thighs have maybe a little separation. Okay, the blocks are going to decide that. If you tend to turn your feet out, the blocks are going to be ultra helpful, more than the bolster probably, because I can feel where they touch onto my lower leg part, right? Not just my foot. And I try to feel my feet turning in more, because if I was to look down, they're likely straight up when I feel like they're pigeon-toed. Okay, so pushing that sand, that weight of rice or sand on the front of the thighs, and feel if you can push. And as you're pushing, you're lifting up in the ribs, and then you're letting the ribs center back onto the bolster. And now, for any reason, this variation of supported bridge, let the arms spread out. I'm going to bring mine so they're a little bit lower than my heart. Or you can have them so they're straight out from the heart. If the bolster, the idea of this range and the bolster is too much, you can also take what we do often is the horizontal chest opener with the bolster across the mid shoulder blade area and have a block under your pelvis and do the same action but not push into the wall. So you can also do that. And this has that energetic of when you feel the movement pattern of inhalation, feel the clarity of the lift of the torso, but see if you can start to manage the movement in the horizontal, so lateral, moving outwards, which probably is the felt sense of the back of your body first. So what's in the back will start to spread around to the front. And merely holding the sides of your ribs is not enough. It's important to let your arms be heavy. And maybe at first it's a visualization of the movement outwards with the breath. You're going inwards to breathe, but you're trying to move the inside of the body and create more spaciousness. If at any time you need more bulk under your head, you could always roll the blanket up under your neck. But feel that the chin naturally has a lift and the root of the tongue and back into the throat has some spaciousness here. It's interesting. From your daily habit, the throat is in a different pressed position downwards with gravity. This is backwards. So providing that safe flow of breath. This may have not been easy to get into, so provide yourself with that safe movement of in and out breath. Okay, with the natural, well, if you could call this natural, maybe it isn't natural for you to be in this type of pushed position for your breathing muscles, but it starts to become a benefit to the inner emphasis of the breathing structure, right? Diaphragm, intercostals, lungs, bronchial tubes, there's so many upper respiratory events occurring when you're in this position with the ribs up and your head back. So we're going to keep that perspective in the center body, but we're actually going to pivot the bolster in a few moments. So it'll be under the back of your pelvis. And so I want you to still maintain that connection to the wall. That's going to be the big difference today. So that you can continuously, if you're not sure what to do, feel the feet to the wall. It's like something you can balance your bones into. You don't spend the day touching the wall with your feet, but it's an interesting feel of your alignment and your habits, because you can really orient them in a different way than when you're standing and kind of shifting around in your daily habit. I want to say daily practice, but it's your habits. Postural habits. Slide the sand, keep it nearby. I don't think it's going to roll away. Okay, so walk the feet in. So you're going to first start with the knees bending, pointing up, taking cobbler's pose. So the feet could be on the bolster, the knees apart. The feet could be on the other side of the bolster on the floor with the feet together, the knees apart. Okay, so the key is that inner lengthening. Pretty foreign to lengthening this zone, unless you're in a practice of sorts. So feeling where the tailbone has that natural arch positioning. So if I have my feet on the bolster, it works for me, but it might not work for everybody. Some of us will find the feet on the floor. Some will wonder if they should put their feet on the blocks, which actually could be useful, but it might be too much stretch to the inner leg. It's a lot of pull. Okay, but why not, huh? You choose one of the three variations. Take a few moments, let the hands be oriented besides you, relaxing, and the shoulders centered back. feel a little different perspective in the walls of the chest from the beginning of the practice, right? There's much more arch. Breathing through the nose, relaxing out of the nose or the mouth. Your nose is your best filter, nostrils, but they may be filtered out right now, doing too much filtering. Okay, so now as you come back in center, you're going to walk the feet apart, lift up the hips, let the weight of your head press a little more into the blanket, and then my neck lengthens. Lift up the hips and reach for the bolster between those shoulder blades. Push the bolster. I like to push it with my thumb, and then my hand stretches the bolster now horizontal across. Now I want you to slide a little bit down on top of the bolster so the back of your pelvis is on top of it, but this is where I like to take my blanket under my head into a little higher fold. Not everyone's going to choose this, but it does change the pathway of the spine. Okay. And then we'll stretch the left foot down to the block or the bolster, whichever you have there. And you might have to lean a little farther downwards. I don't want your bolster to be too high on your back, but I also don't want your rear on the floor on the other side. So what I like to do is push down to my right foot, let my spine and my pelvis center down, including the spine. And then as I push into the wall with my left foot, I'm going to make sure that my block is pushed into the wall too. Okay. So it might be a little bit turned, but at least I feel my foot on. And as I bring the right knee in, I'm then going to get some sand and a belt. Okay. So here is where I want your sandbag on the left thigh, high up on the thigh, so we don't have a lot of knee pressure. So instead of pushing my sand far down to the knee, I suppose some people might be okay with it, but have it so that the thigh lid, or a little bit higher, has that support. Okay. Now, if your left foot starts to come away from the wall, again, if it works that way, you'll need to reset it so you have your foot to the wall. So the bones in this left leg, instead of them kind of flopping out, which we're used to in this pose a little bit, you have some definition with the foot to the wall. Lower abdominals active, belt connected. I want you to make that connection so that your loop is big enough so that you can place it under your right foot. Maybe you have to get your sand on after that. It's a little bit of a challenge to get your belt under your foot. But as you take that big loop, you want to have that loop so it goes from your foot to the center of the back of your head, the occipital zone. But you get to decide, right? If you want the belt to be kind of in more of a loose, so that you have more range leaning back, it's up to you. I'm going to let this one be a little bit firm. So the back of my right leg, if I feel when the leg is lifted, that the focus is behind my knee, and I take a little micro bend of my right knee. Try to center my hips. Okay, and I know this seems like so much about muscles and bones and setting, but it's also energy body work, right? So feel once you get into the lane of travel with the leg circulation back to the heart, with the left leg stretching down, the diaphragm, movement, more of the psoas on this left side as well. Let your arms lower down besides the bolster, or they can spread out to the sides. And feel the ball of the left foot pressing into the wall. You can have the belt either closer to your heel or to the ball of your foot. Entirely up to you. The weight of your head, you can think of it as being weight. moves back. Yeah, if you're trying to be really zen about this, it's probably a lot of work, right, to be in this position. So it's realistic to feel some energetic pressures, right, in the bones. So utilize the cycle of breath to just really feel the present moment in the leg, in the pelvis, the energetic, intensities. And if your head leans back into the belt a little bit further, that's fine, but not required. And the last few moments, just recognize that lower abdominal awareness. I don't find this to be the best toning position. Some schools of thought would use this as more of a toning opportunity, but I find it quite curious with the sand weight stretching that left side of the torso, but then the mid body kind of relaxes on the breath. So let's come into a moment almost like waterfall pose. So what you'll do is you'll take the belt first off of your back of your head. Head goes down, of course. And I want you to reach if either it's the thumbs holding or the palms are together, and you'll stretch the arms back. Now bend the right knee and feel it almost as if you're trying to push that right foot towards the wall. So you got to bend the knee quite a bit so the foot would actually go towards the wall versus towards the sky. Okay. Slide the sand on the torso across horizontal on the torso, and then you'll switch sides. So the left foot goes up and the right leg to the block and the wall. Okay, and then when you change sides, you'll find that this probably was an easier changeover because you already have the belt in the leg positions. You'll slide the sand to the right thigh and carefully getting that belt in a position that you can loosen it or make it more tension on the belt. But when you do flow the leg up, right, it doesn't always float up on its own, right? It requires some releasing, some lengthening on the backside. Okay, so you could bend the left knee, and again, you could pull the belt back as far as it will go with your leg resistance and reach it to the center of the back of your skull. You should all feel kind of different patterns of movement in these familiar shapes that we played with. The different patterns are the definition, right, with the wall. Okay, so if the knee is feeling a little bit not tolerant of the position, you've got to find a way to feel some more peace with that. It might mean no sand on the right thigh. It could be. Doesn't, not required. Okay, so if you have your belt behind your head, if you don't like to have a belt behind your head, you could also do this version, right, with the hands reaching behind you the whole time. Okay. You could come in and out, but center the waist. Feel the center is in the pelvis. And the navel center, instead of the energy of the breath kind of pushing down like prolapse, which is not something we're interested in activating, we want to feel like the energy is pulling up a little bit in the lower belly, just below the navel. So there's more of this inverted pattern. So it's exciting, right, for the core, kind of the core bundle. Press into the right foot. Feel if you press more, what happens in the left leg. If it tightens, if it bends a little bit. Breathe in. Ribs expand. now we're feeling where the hands reach back to the belt, slide it off the back of your head. When your head is carefully let go back to your blanket, then when you hold onto your belt with either the thumbs or the palms together, so the belt would be kind of stuck, right? It's going to be strapped around the between the thumb and the index fingers, what's that called? The thenar web space, the webbing. I think it's called thenar web space. Okay. So as you feel that reach, now we're going to move directly travel down into the top parts of the leg. So as you move the sand away, I want you to put the sand over to the left side. So just kind of drop it over right beside you. Could be, actually, it could be positioned so it's kind of up to the bolster, huh? All right. So bring the right foot up into the belt, take a wide stance, even if you're not standing on the feet, just consider them, kind of visualize that. You have your feet at the ceiling maybe. So you have to push a bit. I want you to feel when the hands hold onto the belt so that there's not as much kind of splaying out of the legs. When you hold onto the belt, you're sort of in a reserved, your leg position is reserved. You can't push. You still can push, but you're not putting the legs farther out. So feel as if you're trying to move into more of a kind of a flex spine, like preparing to bring the legs behind you kind of action with the spine. So if you were to do like a plow pose, which we're not doing, but you would probably have to maneuver the back muscles to widen, right, to spread out. So when you hold onto the belt, feel what happens when you bend the knees, right? The knees might kind of poke outwards. Better for them to poke out than poke in. Okay, pulling. And I want you to push straight up with the feet. You still can have a bent elbow position. And then inhale, belly soft. Exhale, pulling, let the belly rest back towards the spine. Slide the feet together. And then once the knees are in a strong bend, you'll slide your belt off the feet and take a blocker ball between the knees, whichever you have. Okay, so ball would maybe be, if you have one, use one. A block is okay. It's just maybe a little bit more weight, but that's pretty much it for this action. So when you bring the knees, they move side to side and they're moving kind of in tandem, right? But whichever direction you're going, you want to let the arms also have a featured movement outwards. And find a little bit of a trance of movement here. So inhaling center, exhale to the side. Center on the in-breath. And exhale. You can make the breath pace even slower. It's also comforting to relax your breath and not hold it or do too much retention work. Sometimes it's more comfortable for the nervous system. You don't want it to get more nervous. Okay, so feel when you add on these movement angles. I'm not trying to go zigzag with the knees, but what I find interesting with the ball is I feel like I have to push into it to apply what I'm working with in my back. So the block actually might work even better on this one. Okay, so when you go side to side, feel that you kind of push into the hip and linger with that reach, like you're moving your knees towards your arm. Okay. Take a few moments here with that movement, knees to the side and then even up towards the arm or the sandbag. Okay, now last time on this variation, we're going to move the knees over towards the right side. Okay, I want you to hold this. Now, I got to admit something. I had something planned on this one. And since our blocks are down there, I guess we can't do it. Okay, so my vision was we'd be over here, put the sand on the hip, and a block would be under the knees, but it's just not going to work. I suppose you could stuff a blanket, but it's not a firm position. It's not a firm support. So let's toss the idea. Okay, go to the other side, last one. Hold it for a little bit of time. All right, well, always an opportunity to improve. Every time. One of these days I'll get it right. Okay, now bring it back in center and taking the ball out. You're going to put the feet down on the other side of the bolster. Of course, they're farther away than just next to the bolster. And take the feet to the widest stance, not any wider than your mat, but feel a wide stance with the feet. Turn the toes in and bring the knees together. Okay. Feel how the back of the pelvis, the connecting layer, it kind of brings a little bit of tone there. There's not a lot of displacement there. Okay, and feel how the hips have this internal position. And then I want you to actually bring the feet to that hips distance, lift up the heels, roll to the left, and then you're going to slide down the bolster and start to prepare for side sage. Okay, now that we got the blocks again, maybe next class you need 3 blocks, right? Just keep adding props. Okay, take a block overhead, have a block off in the side yard. You're going to need both of them coming up. And on this other side of your bolster, I want you to have 2 blankets. They can be stacked up in quarter folds, right? You could also have the top one in another fold for your neck support. You probably won't know until you get there, even if last class you did it a certain way. Depends on the cumulative effect of the postures really changes class to class. So what we're going to do is, if you got a ball, you're going to place it on the inside of the right thigh. I want to say knee because some of us, we are putting the ball, right to the lower adductor point connected to the knee right before it. Some of you don't use the ball and you have your legs stretching farther back and it doesn't hurt anything. Okay, so I've got my sand close to the side, and when I lean down to my left shoulder, first thing I feel sometimes on this maneuver is if I have my head down, it feels like the blanket's too low. Just wait, but you got some opportunities ahead to get the side stretched down before you make a decision on how much height under your head. So add your sand to your right side, either lengthwise on the side, or you turn the sandbag across. Some of you might find that having the sand low is a nice elongator for the torso. Sometimes my sand too low makes my back unhappy. So you got to figure out what works for you. And don't make yourself sad about it, right? So if you feel like you need it higher, take it higher. And then reach the right arm over. Okay, now this is one where sometimes a chair is a lot better, isn't it? If you have more height under your right arm. And that's just the hand of the arm could reach on a chair. So if you decide to go get some furniture, that used to be called furniture yoga, you could go get some furniture, put under your hand. But with that length on that right side, if it feels like it pings up into that side sensation on your shoulder, rotator cuff bands, you might bring your arm down by your side or to your bolster. So you've got these 3 different ranges, actually 4. You could have your arm open and lengthen. So rest your eyes. The weight of your head rest on its side. Okay, and enjoy that cycle of movement, alternating where it alternates. It could be ribs, it could be armpit, chest. Yeah, I'm not going to define it for you. You may have even more features of movement than I can imagine right in the position. So enjoy the circulation. Maybe that's the key. And be sure you're safe with it. So if your head feels like it's kind of gripping because you're looking at a screen or you're frustrated or what it could be, you want to make sure that your weight of your head is relaxed. So if that means to take your blanket higher, that's what it means. And that's okay. So I have to sometimes spend the energy on letting it relax more often. So having more height under my head just makes it easier. I don't have to try. Breathing, exhaling completely. Okay, so when you do start to flow, hand moving the sand or letting the sand release down, get that one side perspective. So come in between the two sides into hands and knees or onto hands and knees. You'll move any the objects that are distracting that opportunity. So you'll turn so you're on knees, hands. If you need a blanket under your knees, just add your blanket. Make sure there's enough space between the bolster and the blanket so you can place the hands down, making little imprints here with the fingers spread out. Knees apart, and then move your spine towards the ceiling. So rounding the back to feel a lift in the spine. Kind of a strange thing to think of this as lifting my spine. But I guess flexion in this position is, huh? So when you inhale and you arch, coming into that motion of arching and flexing the spine, feel that both directions are curious for the spine, kind of massaging through it, right? You would think of this as a spine massage, huh? But it's really an activating kind of rhythm, impacting the health of your center body, right, which is the organs, adrenals, right, kidneys. So feel that reach of the spine when you move your back and tailbone to tucking. And then when you inhale and feel that hips move back. Okay, fingers are still stretching out. So when you come back to neutral, toes hook under, without the feet at the wall on this one, just lift up the knees and alternate bending them. So you are trying to reach back through the heel, but it may not touch the ground. I'm not saying that you may not touch the ground, but if it does not, still feel that you're reaching through the bottom of the foot. But reaching a heel is like reaching from a sitting bone to a heel bone versus just stretching your foot. It's like there's much more that you're activating than just a foot. Right? If you didn't have the hamstring element, it wouldn't make as much circulation happen, huh? So now that you're, and also it makes the inversion happen. So let the hands press and the feet press. And I think all of us probably feel this is a little challenging. Likely. Seems to continue to be challenging. Such is life. Okay, so lift up the heels, like dog pose is life, huh? So lower down to the knees. And let's take up the blanket. So you come back to getting ready for side sage. But I want you to first thing, let's try this. We're going to do more of a restorative gateway pose. So you gotta have some space to the side. I'm not sure if I'm gonna kick my closet door, but we'll see. So my right leg's gonna stretch out. So my right foot, I'm trying to get the bottom of the foot to the floor, okay? So if you're not clear about this, what you are is you're in table pose, still stay your direction. I'm not going to turn my back to you, but your palms are down and you're going to stretch your leg out. So your right leg, I'm not mirroring you on this one. The right leg is out. So the inside of that right thigh, right, gets quite a bit of stretch. Okay, you could have your knee on a blanket. Please use one if you need to. And the sitting bones are in a really funny position here for the stretch, right? One is kind of peeling out and one's unpeeling. Okay, it's not super appealing. I try to get the bottom of the foot to the floor, but it is not an easy ritual. Lots of adductor pull. Okay, now come back to the knees together and then let the left leg stretch out. Okay, so feeling if you are sensing the hyper motion of the knee, that you're really working the inner thigh. I don't want you to try to bend the knee though, so because that could cause a bit of a cramp. So you try to lengthen. And of course, you can always pose pass. Zoom doesn't have any pose police, I don't think. Okay, now feeling if the right hip tilts to the right, it likely is doing a little tilt. You can tilt it more to make more stretch, but why? Okay, now bring the left leg back in. Now that you are on both sides, we place the body into side sage again, but that's the different side, I hope. Okay, so lean to the right hip and come down to your side seat position. Have a ball on the inside of the left leg. Find the position that supports your joint so that the leg, actually the leg weight probably for many of us feels like it can just pour down. And then with that bolster to your side, keep in mind some of us flush the ribs forward. Some of us kind of roll a little bit back and use the bolster to stretch the ribs. I forgot to mention, this one you could do with a round bolster. Okay. Second side's probably not helpful for you, is it? Another thing I can improve on, but again, I'll keep working on it. So the sandbag could be on the side. Most of us probably place it closer to the hip than up to the armpit because it's kind of awkward by yourself to get it that high. But when you lengthen, if you do turn the ribs towards the ceiling, it's an interesting oblique stretch. So you have some abdominal muscles. Interesting in the stomach area, how it pulls. It's a really interesting practice for the organs. It's fascinating, right? Because we were pushing the position for some time. So it changes their circulation. Just the fabric shifts in the body, the fascia. You know, the left arm could touch a block, it could touch the side, it could touch a chair. Again, you could go get move the furniture around if you need. And if it goes across the hip, just be careful that it doesn't try to push you too far one way or the other. So you've got to find the weight of the right hip down. It's okay if you're turning open to the ceiling. If your right side of your head is firm onto the blanket, let the focus shift in, breathing slow. Now with that movement in the ribs, find just that success of alternating, or maybe success for you is to take a rest in the supported shape, using the props to give you a substantial amount of support on the upper, mostly the upper bones, right? The leg bones are kind of hanging down there. But pretty soon they'll be part of the process, because having extremities on the base are quite important for the inversions, right? That's what makes it that way. Now with that length into the side, slow breath. Now you do what works for you. If you need to come out sooner or stay longer, it's entirely up to you. It's your practice. We're all kind of students here, studying what our body feels is supportive. Okay, so find how you move the sand away, and then we'll shift back to the wall. So I want you to slide your sand off and try to roll. Now, sometimes we'll roll out of this quickly, and our hip does a lot of the heavy movement because it's, well, I guess the center of gravity feels like it's more important than the movement of the neck. I'm not sure, but your head rolls too, right? Your head rolls, your hips roll, but heads do really do that work. So try to push into your blanket with your head and roll to the right side, come up, and as you come around to table, I want you to move your blankets. Let's see, I don't think you really need any of these things. So you're gonna move your blanket off to the side. I think you're gonna go have your this is gonna be one for those that have a ball. So I want you just to know, I'm gonna show this because this has been kind of fun for me, circulation wise for the lymph drain work. Just gonna show this. So actually, let me show this quickly. You're gonna have a blanket, sorry, on the other side of the bolster. Come down, I want you to lay so your belly's on the bolster, but you're gonna put your ball on the front of that right thigh. And it's on the front, but what you're gonna do is massage on the inside of the leg too. So when I lower down, this won't be long for those that don't have a ball. Elbow is down, and you're gonna be massaging the inside of that right thigh. My foot touches the wall, so I have some contact. But I want you just to get a massage on the inside of the thigh. I like to put as much weight on my forearms as I can here. So I'm really just letting that pressure and movement, and this is more of a homework for people who have a ball. I really think it would be good for you to try it. You can even massage across the quad, front of the thigh, and going into both thighs. So that's just a homework piece for after, okay? So the other side you work, and if you want to do the other side right now, go ahead. But I know that some of you don't have a ball, so I don't want to make it too much of a focus. So I've been really enjoying that a lot, okay, for just working on my quads and releasing and circulation for the immune system, for helps it out. So push your bolster and blankets away and have your blocks. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to put the palms on the blocks. So the blocks are flat. And as I push back, I'm going to use my feet to the wall. I have to push my blocks back a little bit more, but I want you to have your heels up at the wall. And you could do this with your hands on the floor. I know the blocks can be a little bit strange, but they do bring the floor up to you, and they get more stretch in you get more stretch in your chest and your shoulders. So press back and feel the heels lifted. Okay. Don't try to get the heels down. They're up at the base of the wall. They're lifted up, and a lot of flow towards the heart. If your blocks are sliding away, it happens. Try it again. See if you can get them back firm on your mat. If your mat's just a little bit of a slippery one, you might end up with your hands on the floor. Okay. All right. Now, take the heels down towards the base of the wall. And then lower the knees down so the heels come off the wall. All right. Now pushing the blocks over for you, you're going to put them over to the right side of your mat. I just don't want it in my way here. So you're going to put your blocks on over to the right side. You'll stretch out through your fingers. And then now as you let the fingers spread out, you'll lift up the knees again and take the feet closer together. Try to let the heels not rely too much on the wall right now. Just have the feet close together. Press the floor away, stretching out through the armpit, chest, and the calves. Breathe. Then let the crown of your head lean down towards the floor. Okay, door number 1 is here. Okay, door number 2, you'd step out into more of a downward dog with heels towards the floor, or if that doesn't work, the heels are up. Door number 3 is to bring the right leg back up at the wall. So you're going to lift up the leg, and you know what this means is weight bearing on the arms. Okay, it's clearly a weight bearing pose. But if it works for you to practice it for even 30 seconds, give it a try. Lower down the right foot and change sides. If you need to take a break in between because your wrists don't like it, come down to the knees, and you can turn the fingers out, the hands out, like so. You can even turn the fingers back towards the wall and stretch out the wrist, okay? And I'm not a big fan of turning the hands all the way this way, but it's often taught. Okay, now change sides, so left leg goes up. If you haven't tried it yet, lift up the left leg. Now I'm trying to actually feel like I can levelize my hips, so I'm not trying to walk the foot as high up the wall as possible. I just get a feeling of that steep stretch in the right leg. Breathe. Okay. Okay, now the arms are going to be happy. So we're going to step the left foot between the hands. Use your blocks. If that didn't work for you, guess what you do? You lower the knees down. You step the foot between the hands and take your blocks. And I want you to lift up so that your hips are up and you're going to turn to the right. So you're in a wide stance. Okay, we're going to take a wide downward dog. So the feet are in a wide stance. They're turning inwards. If the feet are more parallel, that's okay. And push the blocks out, either the second setting, second height, or the lowest height. And I want you to move your hips back, and you can make your stance a little bit shorter, right? If it's just feeling too much, make a shorter stance. But give yourself the freedom to take the hands as far out as you want. Right? They can go outwards. I mean, far out meaning outwards, not stretching all the way down so that your body is prone to the floor. Sometimes if you're a little slippy on the mat and the blocks, that happens. So I guess I've never completely wiped out in this pose, but it could happen. I've seen somersaults in it, but that's about it. So hips stretch back, knees take a micro bend of sorts. So you can feel if you bend a little, just a teensy weensy bit in the knees, how that feeds into the circulation in the hamstrings. It's kind of interesting. So try to keep those sitting bones lifting up, the weight of your head lowering down. Breathe. Yeah, let the belly really feel this enjoyable movement since your head lowers downwards. Even if it's difficult and you bring your blocks in and you're better off here, this is okay too. You still can feel that movement in the torso, opposite of prolapse. So it's kind of an interesting diaphragm motion. Okay, I like it. Keep a few more moments here. If your hands are pushing down, I want you to let the hips stretch back as much as the arms reach, the hips reach. Both ranges. Okay, take a moment where you bend through the knees. Okay, now let's walk on over to the left foot. We'll take our 2 blocks to the left foot away from the wall. I guess we're still at the wall. Think about it, but my left foot turns. And now we're going to set up that right heel to lift and walk the blocks out. And you can either take a lowering of the right knee to the firm ground, or you can take the right knee down and have your bolster across your mat. So I would just take it across under my left leg, lower the right thigh down, and walk your left foot over to pigeon pose. So left foot, cross it over to the right. Left leg reaches forward. If this is too much with just a bolster, you can put a blanket on the other side of the bolster. So you have a knee on a blanket, bolster under your hip, and then a pretty interesting arch. If your face is kind of feeling full because of what you were just doing with being upside down, take a few moments to get grounded. If your foot doesn't like how close it is to the wall, push a little into the wall. And you can lower your elbows down. You can get a blanket, place it under your forehead, or make a little bit more lift with the blanket. I like this version. And then my forehead lowers down onto it. The farther you reach out from the wall, likely your foot's going to start to lose its dependency on it. So it's okay if it's kind of flopped in a position that's not particularly defined. But the left hip feels it. And I feel that width across the back. Back of the pelvis. Maybe high up in the back of the pelvis, you can feel that spreading out higher, even into the kidneys. What a soap this is for the hips, huh? It's a hip soap. When we come around, see if you can stay pretty low in the upper body position, right? So it's not gonna strike itself all the way up. So you're gonna lean left and then let the right leg shift forward. And that's a stretch on its own for the back of the right hip. So try to go into this next side. So you're leaning into the right thigh and your left leg stretches back. And take your time, use your padding. I don't mean like your padding, but the padding, that's the props. And use them all, okay? So feeling that your body is simply going to lengthen the front of the spine forwards. That would think of your navel towards the heart is arching. And the hands, you might find the delivery method for you, kind of the firmness is really good to start with the hands pushing. So you produce that effect in your hip. And then when you do provide movement forward, feel if you're just kind of dropping or if you can create a little bit of maybe alternating, arching, and flexing, just small motions. And then getting down so that your circulation is kind of crafted through the pelvis. It's your system to craft the circulation, and by yourself you can do a good job with that usually. Okay. Not that you're not with others, but in your own solo practice, you can find that as you let your head lower down. Now, feeling where there's the most dependency for weight, right? It's probably, I think it's almost equal with upper bones and the hip area. Okay, so if I let my upper bones lean, I also feel my hip. If I have my upper bones lift, like my head lifts, it's a little bit less. Of course, if you go straight up with your head, it will cause a different amount of circulation in the back because it will create more kind of a spike and lifting your spine. So you decide. You'll finally feel the ribs in the back zone expand. And release. Feel if you can have that safe movement of breath. Okay, now let's find a little bit of grounding in the seated field of posture. So we'll slide the hands back and take your movement slowly. So lean into the right thigh. And remember, it's kind of exterior thigh land. So it's like IT band, a little bit of that touchdown. So when you come around with that left leg, you're going to just easily get down off of your bolster. And you'll put your bolster off to the side of your mat. Take a blanket. I think one folded blanket will be minimum on this one. We're going to do some seated field work. So I think one is minimal. Okay, so I'm going to take the blanket so it's in a quarter fold across the mat horizontal. If you decide to add another blanket up on top, you'll have to figure that out. I mean, I find I'm okay with the one, but I want you to know it's okay to use two. So of course, it's up to your spine and your hips. So what we're going to first do is we'll have our props kind of towards the wall, and I want you to turn to the wall so that you're going to take a one-legged twist. So you'll put your sand on the left side of your mat. I think your ball is going to be a little part of this, if you've got one, or a block for certain, ball or block. Now the blocks don't roll away, so that's a good thing about blocks, huh? They've stood the test of time. Okay, so when you sit on the blanket, if it's a little height, it's just not going to be that big of a deal to get up on it. But if you got more blanket, or you add some, okay. So push the right foot to the wall. Be careful of the back of the knee here. So it'll change. When you bend the left knee, you turn left. You might have to slide the blanket a little bit farther down. Now, this is a long topic about blankets supporting you. Well, there's so many schools of thought on this one, but some would have the blanket so it would be kind of in a diagonal, so it's only under your sitting bones, not under your leg bone. I mean, sitting bone's connected to the leg bone, but you could choose that position. I'm putting my blanket kind of towards the wall, so I feel like I'm about ready to fall off of it with my left thigh. But I know it's better because it's more connected to my sitting bone. So I'm going to stick with that. Okay, now feel the right foot push into the wall. You feel it push. Be close enough so the knee doesn't have too much pulling vibration under it. You could use the ball under the left knee. Let's say having your knee this way is hurting. You put the ball under it. It could hurt, right? For some people, this could be strained. This just feels nice. Okay. Left foot towards the right leg, maybe. That perspective is interesting, but here's what I want to focus on this one is I put my sand on the upper thigh for grounding. And this will be some work in lateral parts, right side and twists. Now, when you push the right foot into the wall, you could have a little micro bend of the knee. You could put a ball under the knee. That's a nice thing about the balls. Even if you have a smaller ball, like a 4-inch one, those fit really good under the knee. Okay, so I want you to use your torso to make your movements, not your levers and getting leverage into your twists and pulling. So I want you to get a feeling, just the hands, both hands on the left knee. The right foot is aware of the wall, that's enough. And as you inhale, feel the natural arch of the spine, like you're lifting up your heart so nicely. And then you're going to turn to the left, turn your head. Don't use your shoulders straight, turn your head, and maybe little parts of the torso are moving, but the arms are holding that back, right? Okay. Now bring the left hand back behind you to the floor or a block. You might need a block on this one. The nice thing about having the hand on the ground, though, if you can touch it, is that you're not going to be forcing into something that's not that the block is artificial, but it sort of is, right? Your contact with the ground is kind of natural. So see if you can lift up through the ribs, inhale, exhale, turn. Now be really careful about how much you use your right hand to pull yourself to the twist. So instead of cranking away and using the leverage with the arms, see if you can feel any movement by pushing your foot into the wall and then turning to the left. Okay, now turn all the way towards the wall. Keep the legs the same. Turn the torso towards the wall. Ooh, that can take a lot out of your back central. Lift the heart, inhale. Exhale, turn to the left. Okay, right hand. The thing about having extremities, it only takes you to work with those that don't have this part to go, oh, we really want to use this mid-body versus pulling with our levers. It kind of causes damage, right? So see if you can find just the right amount of pull with that right hand. Lift up the heart. Exhale. Okay, turn back towards the right leg, but I want you to lean into it this time. So you're going to bend your right elbow. You probably need something besides your leg. You could use your bolster right next to your leg. You could use a block, so it's the second height or the third height. And you're going to lean to that right side. If the left leg pops up quite a bit, you can feel it lift. Again, you're using your mid body versus the levers. And the right arm is down on something. It's on a block or a bolster. And your left side can either relax behind you with the arm, breathing, or take the left arm to stretch over. The nice thing is if you're tall, you're long limbed, you can touch the wall on this one sometimes, and that can be great, but keep in mind, you know, kind of getting antsy and anticipating. I don't think antsy is anticipating, shorter way of saying it, but you know, okay. So feeling if your neck can turn down towards the right arm. And then maybe change the left arm to be behind your back. Take the final few moments, really soothing movement of the ribs with the breath. Stretch out the breath. Stretch out the ribs with the breath, both ways. Take a few more cycles. Okay, now when you do come out, see if you can just visualize that you're moving your torso towards that right leg that's at the base. I guess both legs are at the base, but your right leg is towards the wall, right? So I want you to turn your torso towards that right leg and then turn the torso towards the left and come up, push down to your sitting bones, lift up the heart. You know, just kind of play with that movement field. And then as we get ready to change sides, first thing, just remove the sand. Take slow motions to bring the left leg towards the wall. And I would bend both knees and put a block or a ball between them. Either one is just fine. Since you're sitting on some blanket, we have to be a little careful about how we move the back because you've got something that's pushing up into the pelvis. So I want you to simply bring your hands behind you, turn the hands, the hand fingers back. Okay, squeeze the block or ball, put a little bit of pressure into it. And when you're pushing it, I want you to gently lift up with the heart. Like your heart is arching. I'm not trying to make the biggest arch, but you are arching through the heart. Okay, now relax the grip on the ball or block. Bring your hands below the knees and pull yourself forward. Breathe. And exhale. Feel that roundedness, the spine, and that flexion. And then when you come into the second side, you're going to go from a little bit of this to moving your lower belly and the ribs forward together. So try to engage so that you're working on the energy and that lower abdominals to pull up towards the navel. Okay? So when you come back to the second side, or come to the second side, left foot touches the wall, of course. Yeah, you might find, oh, well, this side doesn't feel exactly the same as the other side, so what do you know? Activate your response here. So left foot to the wall, toes up, flexing, of course. I think you can point your toes into the wall. I hope not. You can use a ball under the right knee or not, and add your sandbag to the right thigh. And take that moment here where you are turning your torso to that right side, right hand back and left hand to right knee. Be careful the left knee doesn't roll in. So it's really important to define that the toes are up. Really important here. So feeling where the back of that left thigh, and if the inside of the thigh is feeling some pressure, then do less twisting. Maybe just look to that right side over the right knee and be there. Okay, now again, we got the leverage issue here. So we're using the arms, they're essentially helpful, but we kind of overuse them, right? So feel if you can breathe in natural arch. Exhale, maybe turn through the waist. Feel the rotation. Lift up the heart. Let go of the right knee. And if you need a block besides the left knee on the other side of it, left side, you're going to lean down to that block with the left arm. Now, if you lean down, it feels kind of sore in the low back waistline. Put the block a little higher, or bring the block closer in towards the upper outer left thigh, so above the knee. That could be a little easier for some with how it pulleys into that low back waistline. Another part of it is using that sandbag properly, like really let the weight center on the right thigh. So whether you lift up the right arm and stretch towards the wall, be cautious, right? We don't necessarily have to touch the wall. Even on the second side, it could have a different sensation, back kind of blend in the waist. Breathing. You can turn your head down towards the left arm. Feel the left foot, if it's turning out, this happens when you pivot to the right, the foot turns in sometimes. When you pivot to the left, the foot turns out. So a wall is a really great prop. It's super good for this kind of work. Right? It knows the alignment when you push into it. Breathing, lengthening. I know we're almost to the final spinal here, so we're getting there. Okay, now if you can feel the torso in the side bend, so one side leans down, one side approaches that range. So when you do come up, I want you to try to get the side of that right side of the heart to lift, kind of a little rainbow effect, and then coming up. And then as you come back to turn the torso to the left leg, last time we did it earlier, turn the torso, this time at the finale of it. So as you take that sand off, now we're going to get right into the hip pieces. The hip pieces. Take the right leg forward, push front, and then I want you to take the blanket so it's back behind you, and you're going to have your bolster on the right side of your mat. Okay? And then now as we lower back, we got a blankie under our head. It's enough height so it's comfortable. And now you're going to push enough back. I want you to push enough back so the right leg lengthens, and then taking a hip crossover. So have a sandbag, and if you have a ball, use it. So you'll cross the left leg to the bolster, and the ball will go snug to the gluteal fold or the sacrum, and then taking a sandbag across the left thigh. So it goes across lengthwise on the side of that left thigh. Left arm stretches open. Okay. Right leg can be very bendy. It doesn't have to be exact pushing into the wall. In fact, that was just to kind of get you, now that you have the bending patterns, turning the left arm open, the chest open, and letting your head roll easily to the left side. That right hand could touch to the left leg. It can be quite useful. But again, remember the idea of leverage, right? Over cranking. So sometimes less is better on this type of positioning for, it does affect your back quite a bit, right? When you pull the leg across. So be sure it's okay for you. Not to say some of us can't push and it's effective. You might feel more complete when you do that. I know I tend to feel this is more complete, like I'm getting a crisp stretch. That might be laying into the position and slow breathing. You don't have to put weight on the leg. Okay, head turns back to center. Moving the sand or the ball first or the sand second, either one that works. Sometimes they both move at the same, but when you move into center, take a moment with the knees pointing up and the back of the pelvis feeling as in constructive rest, right? So feeling the feet pressing. And then when you change sides, you'll move the bolster to the left side. Yeah, it's important to let the knees be in just this mild type of bend, not pushing them into your chest quite yet. And then cross that right leg. Now remember, you don't have to push your foot to the wall to begin this one. I think sometimes it's useful, but this is more of a curvy pose, right? So I'm rolling, I've got the ball. In fact, this is kind of blending many, many different techniques together, right? It's not one school of thought with some of these patterns. But when you open out through that side position, I think this is a little bit of a back bend, a chest opener, a side stretch. You could say it has a little forward bend. Work with it if you notice how the knee position is to the left side. But it kind of gets into all the body spaces and definitely the inner spaces from twisting. So let your head roll to the right. Just feeling the back of the skull ease over. Enjoy this spinal part of practice. Savor the breath. Maybe the pose, maybe it has quite a bit of nourishment that it's kind of gathering in right into your muscles, into your bones. Okay, so feeling a few more moments before we go to our final pose. Feel where there's a twist in the upper body as much as the lower branches and limbs, right? You can feel everything kind of going one direction, then lower body goes the other direction. That cross fiber stretch in the torso. Slide the ball, then the sand, push the sand towards the wall on the floor. And once you come over to that left side, you're going to, if you need to bring your knees into your chest right now to find that completion with the spine movements, this might be a good moment to pull them in. Either hold the back of the legs or below the knees. But we're going to get there, right? Our last pose. So you'll roll to your side and put the bolster at the base of the wall. This is always expected. Most every one of these Zoom classes ends with a legs up the wall, Viparita Karani, such a healing pose. So I sit with my seat on the bolster and I try to tip my hips so that I'm leaning down with my upper body and I'm moving my sitting bones to the wall and I'm on one side of the bolster, right? I'm on the edge of the bolster. Okay. Lower your arms down and swing the legs straight up the wall and get the feeling of the flesh of your lower back moving up on the bolster, and you're trying to get your legs up the wall. Okay, so energetically, right, this pose has a couple different waterfalls in the body. It's oftentimes called waterfall pose. So the first positioning of option is to have the sand on the soles of the feet. And when you take the feet with that little bit of parting, you have some space between the knees, and the weight of the pelvis centers. And center is center of bolster. If you're if you're really moving on one side, try to get closer to the middle. It doesn't have to be exactly primo center, but finding when the bolster is pressing under, there is some perception of pressure up into the pelvis with the bolster. So I want you to let the pelvis relax as much as possible onto the bolster and let the arms flow open. They could be down below the heart. They could be straight out from the heart. So it has a nice flow to it. And the elbows elongating. And work the breath through the fibers of the chest here. If it feels like it's mostly in the ribs, see if you can work the movement of the chest. So that would pour out into the armpits. Resting the weight of your head. Relaxing the root of your tongue. All the way back into the kind of the throat pit here. Even swallowing, clearing that passageway. So that first flush in the body is from the legs, the inner thigh, down to the abdominals. So you have that belly area, that lagoon movement with the breath. And that second drop is from the ribs down to the throat, the endocrine glands. So relaxing the throat. The lower abdominals have some sense of movement to the upper, like towards the navel. Just returning to your quiet self. Glide the arms a little bit closer down by your sides. Feel the elbows lightly press, and then bend your knees. Shift your feet just a tad away from the wall at first to level out the weight dynamic in the kidneys, right? Be cautious, slow, and then bend through your knees. And if you've got sand that you like to drop overhead, you could do that. We won't hear it. And you can also slide it off your feet, place it beside you, hands at the back of your legs or the knees, and pull the legs in towards your upper chest. It makes it all the easier to roll side to side, rock side to side, and then roll. and roll to come up to sitting. And let's take a final moment, just simply seated on top of the bolster, of course, and finding a moment for your quieting self to integrate from here towards the rest of the day. So bring your hands to balance in front of your heart. Let's connect to receive wellness, feeling the support from this practice. Inhaling, exhale, bowing into that space behind your heart.